Okay, this is a model that I worked on in Modo back in 2016. This image here is the original render that came out of Modo back then. And this is the new and improved render that I just created in Blender. And I thought it might be interesting to show how I created the capsules, and more specifically, the spirals inside the capsules. So let's get into it. Here I have the capsule saved out to its own file. And the end caps are just cylinders. If I go to Edit mode and turn off the subdivision surface modifier, you can see that all I did was inset, extrude, and bevel to create all of these grooves and steps and everything. And then I added in all of these support edges to keep it from deforming when I go back to object mode and turn the modifier back on. You can see that the cap does not deform, it holds its shape. And then once I was finished with one cap, I just mirrored it across to create the other one. The glass is another cylinder, but I wanted it to have some thickness. So if I hit Shift A and add in a cylinder, go to Edit mode and select the top and bottom faces. Then go to the Inset Faces tool and inset in just a little bit to get that edge thickness. And then right click and select Bridge Faces, and that will punch a hole through the cylinder. So let me delete this and go back to the original glass tube, and I'll go to Edit mode and turn off the modifier, and you can see the support edges that I added in to keep it from deforming when I go back to object mode and turn the modifier back on. You can see it holds its shape. So yeah, all pretty basic stuff up to this point. Okay, now for the spirals. I'm going to go ahead and delete these and make new ones. Now, the first thing you have to do is go to the Edit, Preferences, Add-Ons, and type Extra in the search box. And you want to enable this Add Curve Extra Objects. And while you're at it, you may as well enable Add Mesh Extra Objects. Because, let me just show you, if I disable both of these, and I come over here and hit Shift A, this is what I have in the Mesh menu, and this is what I have in the Curve menu. If I come back over here and enable both of these, and then Shift A, now I have all this extra stuff in the Mesh menu, and all these extra things in the Curve menu. So go ahead and enable those, and then save preferences and close the window. Now to create a spiral, hit Shift A, go to Curve, Curve Spirals, and choose Archimedean. And this will place a curve object at the origin, but as you can see, it's way too big and it's flat. So if I open up the Curve Spirals menu, I can change these settings to get something that will work for this model. Now you can see the spiral type is set to Archimedean with the direction counterclockwise. For turns, I'm going to do 9. For steps, I'm going to do 36 to smooth it out a little more. For the radius, I'm going to do 0.012. And for the height, 0.018. And now you can see a spiral object has been generated. But I need it to have thickness, like a tube. So I'm going to come over to Object Data Properties, Geometry section, and I'm going to come down to Depth, and I'm going to set this to 0.0026, and I'm going to set the resolution to 6. And now you can see I've got my tube, And if you want to see what the mesh looks like before you commit to it, go to Object Properties, Viewport Display, and enable Wireframe. And you can see what it's going to look like. And this mesh looks fine to me, so I'm going to turn off Wireframe. Then I'm going to right-click, and somewhere here, wait a minute, switch to Object Mode, then right-click, and convert to Mesh. And now I want to move this spiral up until the end of it starts to break through the top face inside the cap here. So I'll bring it up until it just starts to break the surface, and then back it back down a little bit. And that should be good right there. Next, I'll go to Edit Mode. And I'm going to select this edge loop here at the end. And then I'll hold down the Control key and hit the plus key on the number pad about 100 times until I get all of these sticking out the end. You can hit Alt-Z to see through and make sure you get enough selected, but you don't want to go through the inside face, so that should be enough right there. Then hit X and delete faces. Then you can hit Alt-Z again to turn off transparency, and that looks good. Now I need another spiral, so I'll switch to Object Mode, and I'll hit Shift-D to create a duplicate, and if you right-click, it will snap back to its original location. So now I can switch to the Rotate tool, and if I hold down the Control key, that will allow me to rotate in 5-degree increments. So I'm going to rotate around to 180 degrees right there. Now I have two separate spirals, but I want them to be one object. So if I select one spiral and then shift-click on the second one, I can then right-click and join, and that will combine them into one object. And now I'll right-click, choose Shade Smooth, and then I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier and set the viewport resolution to 2. Okay, so that's it for the modeling. Now I just need some chrome and glass materials. So the first thing I need to do is go to Render Properties and set the render engine to Cycles and the device to GPU Compute. Then I'm going to change the viewport shading to the render preview. And I should mention that I have an HDRI image set up for my lighting. If you don't know how to work with HDRI images, I have another video that covers all that, and there's a link in the description below so you can check that out. Okay, the first material I'm going to create is the chrome material. So I'll select the end caps and switch to the shading workspace. I'm going to switch to the render preview. And I already have a default material set up here, but I'm going to click this button to add a new material. And I'm going to call it Chrome. And then I'm going to click on the base color, switch to Hex, and type in EAECEC. And then I'm going to come down here to metallic, and I'm going to set that to 1. And I'm going to set the roughness down to 0. Actually, that's too much. I'm going to set it to 0.05. You set it all the way down to 0, it becomes too much like a mirror. But if you set it just up a little bit, 0.05, you get a little bit of blurriness in the reflection. Next, I'll hit Shift A, and I'm going to add in a mix shader. I'm going to put it in between the principal BSDF and the material output. Then I'll hit Shift A again and add in a glossy BSDF. And I'm going to set the color to black and then plug the BSDF output into the shader input. Then I'll hit Shift A again and add in a layer weight node. And I'll plug the Fresnel output into the FAC input. And that should give you a pretty nice looking polished chrome material. Next, I'll create the glass material. So let me unhide the glass tube and select it, and then create a new material. And I'll call this glass. And for this one, it's really simple. You just set the roughness all the way down to 0. And then for the transmission, drag that all the way up to 1. And now you have glass. And now I'll select the spiral. Come down here and click New. For this one, I'm going to call it Glass Blue. And I'll do the same thing as before. I'll set the roughness down to 0. Transmission up to 1. And then for the color, I'm just going to make it nice blue. And that's pretty much it. So now if I switch to the Layout tab and unhide my camera, lights, and floor plane, and hit 0 to jump into camera view, and then hit F12 to render. This is what I get. Okay, that's about it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and post them below. And as always, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.